All right, so we're going to go into part 2 of this. Basically, this is the second half of this this love list that Paul put together. So the next one is love does not dishonor. Love does not dishonor. And honor isn't really a term that you hear a lot anymore. Back when I was a young leader coming up in my early 20s, you heard a lot about honor. It was something that really was communicated a lot, and it's not, sadly. We don't really see it illustrated a lot on ministry teams anymore. And this is something that I really want to bring back. And not that I think we're like intentionally dishonoring people. I just think that we just have certain expectations. It's kind of like the old saying when the couple got married and on their wedding day, the guy told her, "I love you." And then years later, the wife said, "You never tell me anymore." And he says, "Well, I told you on our wedding day, it's still true." And I think honor can kind of be the same thing where, well, yeah, I honor you.
Yeah,
well,
this is understood.
well, yeah, but it would be nice that you showed that you did.
Yeah.
So I think honor needs to be in the heart of every ministry team. And this is a big thing for me personally. Just like being kind is a decision, honor and showing honor to leaders on your team is a decision that you make. And honor means that we bring the best version of ourselves to the team.
So good.
That's the first thing that I think honor looks like. If I'm going to honor Tim as my pastor and my boss and my leader, then I'm going to bring the best version of myself to the team, right? So it's look at it this way. It's kind of like putting on an expensive dinner for somebody who's famous, right? If you were going to have somebody famous over to your house, you're going to pull out all the stops. I mean, you're going to spend some serious money on some filet mignon that's aged that, you spent some money on. I mean, you worked on making homemade mashed potatoes, not the kind out of the box, right? I mean, you garden fresh green beans, not the kind out of the can. I mean, you just really go the extra mile, your best clothes, their best meal. And if that person that you put that meal together for, that you spent all that time and money on, if they showed up late, you would never mention it. To me, that's what honor looks like. That's what honor looks like. You'd pay careful attention to what you said and how you said it to them, because that's what honor looked like. You would insist that they sat in the best seat. No, here, you take this seat. You take the seat facing the door, right? I want to honor you. Excuse me, I want to honor you in that way. In every way possible, you'd put them first at that dinner. They would be the most important person at the dinner. The whole dinner would revolve around them. You'd make your best effort to be the best possible version of yourself as an expression of honor to them. I think that needs to happen on a consistent daily basis on our teams. And the thing about being a family ministry is, it's like your family, you're stuck with me, right? It's kind of that attitude comes along. It's like your family, you're stuck with me. And when we get in a place where we get too comfortable with one another, and I'm not talking about walking around uptight, I think we ought to be family with one another. I don't want a business atmosphere in our ministry. I really don't. I want family. But in family, we can become too familiar to the point that the way we, sometimes in family, we wouldn't talk to somebody coming through the front doors of the church on Sunday morning the same way we did our kids or our mate the night before, right? So this is what I mean when I'm talking about honor. Or think of it this way. Think of the most valuable possession that you have, something that's really, really valuable to you. Maybe something that was passed down to you. I know my grandfather, he gave me a couple things that he passed down to me. One thing he passed down to me that came from his dad was a pocket watch. It's an 18-karat gold pocket watch, and you pop it open, and it's got an inscription from his dad to him, and it's dated like 1809 to something. Yeah, it's really, really old. And it was given to me. And I mean, it's a big deal. And I don't get the thing out and play with it, you know, or leave it laying around. I mean, it's in a jewelry box, and it's packaged away, and it's kept really, really protected, you know, or a vehicle. You know, you watch people get a brand new vehicle, man, they park it like way out there away from everybody. You know, y'all seen that. And they'll walk the extra mile just to keep somebody from dinging the door or scratching or whatever, because it's important to them. They handle that item differently. Now think about how you would feel if somebody mishandled that item. Like if somebody mishandled my watch that my grandfather gave me, or somebody mishandled my brand new, I remember I had when I was in high school, I graduated in '84. Well, in 1980, they came out with the short wheelbase Chevy truck, the box truck. And I remember when I was in 9th grade, a senior pulled up in the parking lot in a blue and silver one, and my mouth was salivating. That was the most beautiful, gorgeous truck I'd ever seen in my whole life. And I said to myself, one day, I'm going to have one of those trucks. Well, it was way after we got married. What did I do? I had a barn find, and I found one of those trucks. And I mean, I asked my wife, countless hours working on this thing. I mean, brand new paint job from top to bottom. I went through the whole truck, you know, for several years. It was my prized possession. I had a brand new paint job on this truck, and I parked it out in our church parking lot. And I'm not talking months after I got it painted. I'm talking a day after I got it painted. One of those interns, I had parked it way out of the way. One of those intern girls pulled right up beside my truck and opened her door up right into my door. And I'm talking 2 days after my paint job, I had a ding in my door. Oh, it was so hard. I was like, God. So think of it that way, right? Think of it something that you really value, and now it's been mishandled. And so that, to me, that kind of captures the word when you honor something. You ascribe value to it. When you honor a person, you ascribe value to them. When you honor a person, you protect their reputation. You know, I have people say stuff about Tim, and I kind of got myself in trouble early in our marriage with my wife, and I had to make a course correction because and Angela's awesome. She's an awesome woman, and my wife doesn't gossip. I mean, she's just not, and I appreciate that about my wife. But, you know, in the course of ministry, you know, you work with imperfect people, and there would be time to time, Angela would be like, why did Tim do that? Or why did Tim do that? And I wanted to so honor Tim that if my wife ever said anything, even constructive criticism, I'd be like, oh, we're not talking about pastor. Well, what I caused a real problem in my marriage, because now, you know, I'm putting Tim over her, and I'm protecting him, and I'm not, and, you know, it was just too far to the other ditch, right? Even truth taken to an extreme can fall into error. And so I took it way too far. And so, you know, just marriage tip, you got to be careful about being overly defensive of your leadership if your mate comes to you and is offering constructive criticism, because there's a difference between constructive criticism and just being critical, okay? So I think we should protect one another's character. We should protect our leadership. If somebody's talking bad about them, hold on, wait a minute. What's going on here? What's happening? Let's talk this through. I think that ought to happen. I think that's what we safeguard things that we ascribe value to. I mean, I've got an old motorcycle that I redid, and I spent hours on this motorcycle, 1975 Honda CB750. I redid the whole thing. It's awesome. I love it. I ascribe a lot of value to that bike, and I protect it. It is in a climate-controlled shop, and I keep it clean and nice, and I don't just let anybody ride it, right? I'm really protective of this thing. So we protect and we safeguard things that we ascribe value to, and that's what honor looks like. Honor involves expressing value through protection. And we do that with team members. We protect them. You know, I've had church members talk negatively about staff, and I'm quick to defend our staff. Now, I'm not going to defend a staff member that did something immoral or that went against the word. Hey, they're going to have to walk that out. I mean, they did something they knew they shouldn't have done. If they sinned, I'm not covering that up. That's their deal. God will have to deal with them, and they'll have to walk that out. Now, I'll be with them, and I'll help them. If they're repentant and they're humble, then yeah, I'm not going to throw a stone. I'm going to be right there loving them and helping them through that. So I'm not talking about covering up for things on, that are done on staff that were inappropriate, right? That's not what I'm talking about. We're talking about protecting and honoring staff. I protect their reputation. I protect them as a leader. You know, I've had people say different things about Tim, and I understand. You know, Tim's real black and white. You know, it's like it's right or it's wrong with Tim. That's just the way Tim is. If that cake, like for me, if I ate a piece of cake, how was that cake, Paul? No, it's pretty good. Tim's like, that's the best cake I ever had in my whole life. I mean, that is the best. I mean, there's not a better cake than that. Or that was the worst cake I've ever had in my, if it cost $100, no, it cost 2 cents or $1 million. I mean, that's just Tim. Well, if you don't understand his personality, then sometimes what he preaches and communicates, people can take the wrong way. So my job is to say, well, let me explain. See, you just don't know. I know Tim's heart. I know Tim. See, I'm protecting him. Does that make sense? I'm not, I can't believe he preached that. I never would have done that, and I wouldn't have done that. But, there's things that I do that Tim would never do, right? So the shoe fits on either foot. That's just the way it works. I think, and this is more for you younger guys that are in ministry. I run into this. I think a lot of younger ministers make the mistake of thinking that honor is something that's earned, and honor is not something that's earned. Okay, and I want to develop this just a little bit. Honor, just like being patient and just like being kind is a decision, honor is a decision. It's a choice that you make, because honor is what love does. And once again, we don't get to describe love. God describes love. We just agree with what God says love is. Mutual honor creates a culture of respect on the ministry team, and it makes it really easy for us to believe the best in the people that we do ministry with. Because I want to believe the best. I don't want to assume the worst. I want to believe the best about people. I think that's important, especially on ministry teams. We're made in the image of God. That makes us all inherently honorable, right? Because we're children of God. So we deserve honor. You don't earn honor. Honor is something that we give to people because they're made in the image of God. We're supposed to honor all people, even people who disagree with us, even people who attack us over social media, and they don't even know what they're talking about. We still, our reactions are our responsibility, right? Our thoughts, our heart attitudes, whether or not we choose to walk in honor or not. I made a post just yesterday about the huge win for us that we got for life. And I made a post about it, and I've had almost 300 comments and 40-something shares on that one positive comment, and some of them weren't positive. That's right. And I had a girl say to me this morning, F off, right? But I choose to honor her. I'm not going to respond that way to her. That's right. I'm not going to react to her. As a matter of fact, later today, when I have time, I'll message her and send her a look, just because that's not what I'm not about that. Leaders have to take the high road. Leaders, we live in glass houses, and people see our lives all the time. They're watching us. And we have to make sure that we're doing the best. Now, we're not perfect, but people want you to be, right, and they expect you to be. You're not, and you're just going to have to do the best you can. And when people talk about you, you can't let that stick to you. I mean, I'm not saying that you shouldn't hear constructive criticism and let it and try to grow from it. I mean, we've got some criticism in our church, and we're working at learning and doing better. We're not just, passing it off and, oh no, none of that's true. No, here's the thing that you can know about criticism, and here's why criticism hurts so much. Because there's always a little bit of truth to criticism. And if you're a leader who just shucks criticism off to the side, well, that doesn't apply to me because they came from a broken home, or they're mad, or they're upset, or they're this, that, and the other, then you will not grow as a leader. Because there's always an element of truth to criticism. Even destructive criticism, like somebody's wanting to. Now, you got to be careful that doesn't stick to you and take you out, right? A lot of it's got to be like water on a duck's back. But at the same time, I think it's important that you analyze it and look at it. So honor is a very important thing. It's something that we give because it's inherently given to us by God. Honor doesn't rest on a person's behavior at all. It rests on the divine spark of God's image living inside of us. We are His image bearers, and we give honor to people because of that, not because of what they do or they don't do. I did not vote for President Biden. I don't agree with pretty much anything that he does, but I'm not going to badmouth the guy. He's the president. He is in a position of honor, right? I taught my boys when they were growing up, one of the things that really irritates me is to watch parents in stands at ball games dishonoring refs. Yeah. That gets me. Because, I think as a parent, we got to teach our kids, you're going to get a lot of bad calls in life. And that does not give you permission to dishonor a ref just because he made a call that you disagree with. That's being disrespectful to authority. And I'm not going to teach my kids that you can be respectful and honor authority when they make all the calls that you think are good calls. But when they don't, you don't have to. See, that's not what I want to teach. And the same on a ministry team. There's been lots of calls that Tim made that wouldn't have been my call. I don't agree with that call. I don't think, but see, here's what that looks like when I'm going to honor Tim. Instead of going into Tim's office and saying, Tim, I can't believe you said that. Why did you do that like that, Tim? Here's what honor looks like. I'll walk into Tim's office and I'll say, hey, man, have you got a minute? Yeah, sure, what's up? Well, I know this situation and this is what was decided, and can you help me understand why you did that? Because I know there's got to be another side to the coin other than just what these people told me or what I heard through the grapevine, right? So I'm going to give Tim the benefit of the doubt that there were other reasons behind his decision, and it probably didn't even look like that anyway, and the majority of the time it doesn't. There's always two sides to every coin. All right, the next one is love is not self-seeking, and this just sounds like another way of saying what Paul has already said, and that's because it is. I mean, he's said this, but this can be said another way. Love is not self-seeking. You could look at it this way. Love puts the interest and needs of other people before us. Because I think it's really easy for us in ministry or just in life to get focused on what we're doing. Our event, our thing, our dreams, our goals, our plans. And we tend to forget, hold up, there's other people that work with us that they have needs just like that too, And once again, he said it before in different ways, but it's just, helping other people fulfill their dreams, and God will help you fulfill your dreams, right? All right, let's move on. The next one is love is not easily angered. So this means you're not easily provoked, right? You're not easily stirred up over something. And we've all heard it said or said it ourselves, you know, that person knows how to push my buttons, right? We've all said that. Or, you know, they really know how to set me off. They really know how to get me wound. I mean, boy, they get me wound up. There's just some people, they get me wound up, you know, and I got to leave before I say something I'll regret saying, right? I mean, all of us have been in that position. But the thing about love doesn't get stirred up. It doesn't get wound up, and love doesn't get set off because it's love. It just doesn't. In other words, love doesn't have a short fuse. I've just got a really short fuse. Well, you've got really short love, right? You're really short on love. If you have a short fuse, you're short on love. Because the fact of the matter is, you know, when I'm prayed up and I'm had my time in the Word, I do great with our staff. We all get along really good. I do really good with my wife too. But when I'm not, when I hadn't been in my Word, I hadn't been in prayer, I hadn't been spending times in worship, just soaking in some worship music, right? Then I am impatient. I'm easily frustrated. I'm easily irritated. It's like that commercial when you're hangry, you know, the Snickers thing. And I'm that guy. Boy, I get hungry, I change. I'm like Dr. Jekyll to Mr. Hyde. It's weird. Anybody else get hangry? Ooh, man, it's like, get me some food right now. So, you know, I think we have to, you know, when we're all tempted to respond, that's easy for you to say, Paul, because you don't know so-and-so. And we all have a so-and-so on staff, and we all have a such and such that goes to our church, right? You just don't know such and such. You don't know what they're like. But the fact is, we all do. And it is true, I don't know them, because I've got people that on staff I enjoy being around more than others. I think that's just normal to any staff. I don't have anybody on staff that I just can't stand to be around. I really don't. And hopefully that's part of just me maturing. I hope it is, not just the fact that we don't have any really difficult people on our staff. But here's something that's equally as true. Stirrees always blame stirrers. They do, every single time. Yeah. I spelled it S-T-I-R-E-E-S. Stirrees always blame stirrers. You know, and here's the thing, guys. No staff member has ever blamed their way into a preferred future. You're not. So don't be that person on staff that's going around blaming everybody for things that are going on. It's not going to move you into your preferred future. As a matter of fact, it might remove you from your preferred future. Because when someone's words stir something inside of you, just think about this. When somebody says something and it stirs something inside you, it's inside you,
That's a good point.
not them.
Good point.
When my wife makes me mad, it's in me. That's on me, right? That's I have to take responsibility for that thing. So love owns it, and love goes to work on it, right? And hey, this isn't easy. I got to do it too. I mean, Monday morning I'll be back at work, and I'm going to have to apply the same thing that I'm talking to you guys about, you know, right now. Oh, I forgot to get that. I forgot. Did you get that taken care of? I forgot to call. I mean, we've had a sign down. Our digital sign at our church has been down for almost a month. And Tim's been working with another young man to get it resolved, and he hasn't been able to get it resolved. And finally, Tim came to me, I think Wednesday, said, "Hey, man, you're going to have to call. This ain't happening. We're not getting it done." Well, I called him, and, and sometimes you have to get a little aggressive in your conversation with people to get stuff done. And, the part was delivered the next day. And we've been 3.5 weeks trying to get it done. And, as a leader, it could be real easy for you to say, well, this frustrates me that this person couldn't make this happen on our staff. They couldn't make it happen. Or you can go, okay, let me help train them and teach them how to make it happen. What can I do to empower them, to bring them to, instead of me being frustrated with them, and that stirred me, what can I do to empower them, to help them learn how to get that job done like I had to learn to get that job done? And obviously some people's personalities, you don't need to put them in those positions because they're just not, my wife would not be the person to put in that. Well, I don't know, sometimes she's been married to me a long time. Sometimes I rub off on her a little bit. But, we all want to do ministry with people who are not easily angered, someone who is not easily provoked. And the fact is, when two people on staff own their individual issues instead of point fingers, then good things happen. And we just don't want to be staffs that are pointing fingers at each other, just, right? The old saying, you got one pointing to them, you got more pointing back at you. So, but, nothing gets resolved and nobody wins when we point fingers. Nothing. Nothing gets resolved and nobody wins when we point fingers. So everybody walks. So you can point fingers at people and you can walk away feeling justified, but you'll also walk away being isolated.
That's
right. Right?
Yeah.
You may be justified, but you're going to be isolated. You may be vindicated, but you're also going to be alone. And that's not fun. It's not fun doing ministry with people and you're alone. I mean, I've talked with different staffs, and I get into this conversation, and there's always those one or two people that everybody on the staff does everything that they can to avoid because this person is just so difficult to deal with, And you don't want to be that person. You don't want to be the person that when other staff members see you coming, they want to go the opposite direction or hide behind a bush. You want to be the one that, hey, man, how's it going? It's good. They want to be around. Once again, you are inspiring them with love. They want to help you. They want to be around you. They know that you have their best interest at heart. That's healthy team. All right, let's go on. This is a hard one. Love does not keep a record of wrongs suffered. This is a hard one. Now, I remember my parents, when they would argue, the record books would come out. I remember this when I was a kid growing up. I mean, record keepers are those people that every time there's a disagreement, they're going to open up their middle file cabinet and they're going to start reading out loud all of the stuff that you've done over the years. And when you do ministry together for a long period of time, there's a lot of water that runs under the bridge. And, there's a lot of really bad ideas that were good ideas at one time, and now they're bad ideas, but we don't remember the fact that they were a good idea at one time. We just remember what a bad idea it is now, right? And so there's all this water that runs under the bridge. And the funny thing is about record keepers, they rarely keep track of their mistakes. I mean, here's everybody else's filing cabinets, and there's just rows and rows of them, and their folders are full, but then here's their file cabinet, and there's one folder. That's the difficulty about record keepers. They're really short memory. They're just too busy filing other people's mistakes. They don't have time to deal with their mistakes because they're so busy filing everybody else's mistakes. And if you grew up in a record-keeping home with record-keeping parents, then you are very aware of the negative dynamic that created in your home. My parents divorced when I was a teen. Super hurtful. I went off the deep end. Drugs, alcohol, just hurt, messed up young guy for years. And a lot of it had to do with the fact that my mom and dad were record keepers, and ultimately that negative dynamic, the scripture says, if you reap what you sow the flesh, here's what's going to happen. That's what my parents did, and that's what happened. And so it created, but here's the thing, and you may not be aware of this because I wasn't aware of this, but if you've grown up in that kind of environment, you're prone to follow suit because that's what you grew up in. See, when I came into ministry, I was way more negative than I was positive. I wasn't a faith guy. I was a pessimistic guy. As a matter of fact, Terry Brooks, y'all know Terry. Terry's, real to the point. And Terry told me many times, Paul, you're so negative. You're just so negative. And it made me mad at first that she would point out that to me. But then it challenged me. Okay, I'm going to change. I'm not going to continue to be like my parents were. And don't get me wrong, there was a lot of great qualities that my mom and dad had, and I'm grateful for a lot of them that they gave me. But there were some qualities too that were not good, and that was one of them. And so you have to be aware of that. If you grew up with a record keeper, you'll have to fight not to become one, because it just comes more natural to you. It's easier because that's what you grew up. And here's the challenge with record keepers. They're usually right. All those files that are full of records of things done wrong, they're pretty accurate. Usually, that's the bad thing about it. That team member actually did all those things that they remember in vivid detail. So the problem with record keepers, it's not their accuracy. The problem is the damage that their record keeping does to relationship. Because record keeping ruins relationship. As a matter of fact, you can't have a loving relationship if you're going to be a record keeper. You'll never grow close and feel a part of the team if you're a record keeper. And especially in ministry, so much of ministry revolves around activities, tasks, goals, events, responsibilities, and all that includes a myriad of things that have to be done, decisions that have to be made, and mistakes that can be made along the way. Hindsight's 20/20. I can look back over lots of stupid things that I did when I was younger in the ministry, and lots of decisions that I made that I shouldn't have made. But I'm thankful that Tim doesn't, every time that I do something wrong, Tim doesn't pull out this long list of files of, well, you did this in 1989. In 1991, there were 4 things that let's talk about. In 2001, here's what happened. And record keepers, I'm talking vivid detail. They know what you were wearing when you did it. They know, everything. It's crazy. So it's not their accuracy, it's the damage. And rehearsing the past does nothing to alter or improve the future. Nothing. And that's why if you want love to thrive in your ministry, if you want love to thrive in your marriage, you can't be a record keeper. Love can't thrive under that. Rehearsing the past does nothing but harm. The fact is, I know what I did in the past, and I don't need to be reminded of it. I don't know if y'all are like me. I already know what I did wrong. I don't need you reminding me of it. I already feel bad about it. I already feel like a dummy. I already feel stupid that I made that bad decision or that bad call, or I put that event on and only 3 kids showed up, or what. Clearly I get it. I missed it. I made the mistake. I didn't follow. Whatever. And I'm not saying that there aren't areas in staff that members don't need to change. I have to change. There are staff members that we have working for us. They need to change. Some of them don't just need change. They need therapy. They need serious help. And I've tried to help them. But filing and being a record keeper doesn't foster healthy relationships. right? It's not going to move your relationship with people further along. It's just not healthy. So here's what I recommend. Forgiving and pretending to forget is the best option. Now, you can't forget because we aren't capable of doing that, but we can pretend that we forgot. Yeah. I do that in marriage, right? I have to do that with interns. I have to. There's no way that I can keep doing what I'm doing if I don't pretend to forgive. And then I have to actively work at forgiving. Love doesn't keep dousing the present with the past. It can't, not in Thrive. So we've got to let things go. And besides, it doesn't do any good. I mean, it doesn't do any good to douse the present with the past. I mean, what good is that going to do? Now, once again, I'm not saying we don't have team meetings and we don't, every Monday morning we have team meetings and we talk about, okay, what did we do right, what did we do wrong Sunday? Where did we win, where did we lose? I think that's good to do that. I don't think that's bringing up the past. Bringing up the past would be, yeah, I remember 3 Sundays ago when you did such and such, why'd you do that? That's what I'm talking about, right? I'm not talking about, constructive growth through looking at things that we've done. I think that's definitely important. But if you're a record keeper, here's something I want you to understand. As a staff member, you can be exactly right, but you'll also be exactly alone. Because you can truth the relationship right out of your connections with people. Amen. And so you got to be so careful about doing that. You don't want to be reminded of your failures every day, and neither do other people. They don't want to be reminded of their failures. And the fact is, in ministry, gaps get created every day. Well, in any relationship dynamic, gaps get created every single day. Every single day. Let me paint a picture here. Every time a staff member does something wrong, a gap gets created. Okay? You get to decide what you put in the gap, but gaps happen all the time. So, for example, a staff member says that they're going to meet you at a certain time. A staff member says they're going to help you with a certain project. A staff member says, they're going to follow through on something and, whatever, and they don't. Well, in that moment, a gap is created. Now, you get to decide what you put in the gap, and there's only 2 choices that are going in this gap. One is going to be trust. The other will be suspicion. But you get to decide what you're going to put in that gap. You either believe the best or you suspect the worst. Like they were going to meet you at 9 o'clock and y'all were going to work on a project, or somebody said they were going to volunteer in nursery and they didn't show up, and now here you are on Sunday morning. So what are you going to put in the gap? Are you going to put, well, their car probably broke down, their kid's probably sick, something came up, and that's why they weren't able to make it. Not, I can't believe they just left me high and dry like this. Why would they do that to me? See, that's suspicion. Trust believes the best. Doesn't love believe the best? Yep. Love believes the best. Suspicion believes the worst. Yeah. So we get to choose in the dynamics of our relationships with one another. When we miss it, and you will, and they will, you get to decide when that gap is created, what are you going to put there? Are you going to put trust, or are you going to put suspicion? Because the Bible says love protects, right? Love trusts. Love hopes. Love perseveres. That's kind of like that long suffering. So when there's a gap, love does everything possible to protect the integrity of the relationship and believe the best instead of falling over into suspicion and thinking the worst. Does that make sense? Yes. And I think that's so important that we have that with each other, because if everything is based on suspicion, they said they were going to do this and they didn't, they committed to this and they didn't follow through, they said they were making this phone call and they didn't do it, then if we always are living in a position of suspicion, then, man, well, you talk about an unhealthy ministry.
Yeah.
I've got to give them the benefit of the doubt. Tim said that. It came out that way. But I know that's not what he meant. That's not his heart. That's not, Josh, he didn't take care of this like he said he was. And I'm thinking, he doesn't respect me. He doesn't respect my authority. He told me he was going to do that. Now, he wouldn't have done that to Tim. If Tim had said that, Josh would have got it done. But no, you know what my thought is? Something happened. Josh has got 4 kids. He's busy. He's got a lot going on. Something happened. And inevitably, guys, 99% of the time, it's true. Something came up. That wasn't what they meant. That wasn't their. Are y'all hearing what I'm saying? But believing is seen. Believing is seen. Love does not delight in evil, but it rejoices in the truth. As a matter of fact, it says right here, verse 6 and 7, it always protects, it always trusts, it always hopes, and it always perseveres. That's the kind of staff member we want to be. That's what we want to look like. Because love chooses to see the best and believe the best while choosing to overlook the rest. There's a lot that you got to overlook. My wife has to overlook a lot about me, and I'm thankful. I'm thankful that she does. I don't have to overlook that much about her, but she has to overlook a lot about me. And people that work with me have to overlook a lot about me. But love isn't looking for bad behavior or expecting bad behavior. I can't run an internship where I'm looking for and expecting bad behavior out of our interns. That's not what love looks like. Love does not look like that. It doesn't focus on people's faults. Love is the opposite of being a record keeper. I mean, the total exact opposite. Have y'all ever heard the term love is blind? Now, we use that usually like in unhealthy relationships, right? Or a parent who is, just blinded to their children's irresponsibilities. Oh, they're just wonderful. No, your kid's really not. Even though you think they are, they're really not all that you're saying they are. But what Paul is saying is, literally, true love chooses to be blind when it comes to people and their faults. It chooses not to focus on their failure. And it's easy to focus on people's failure. Why? Because they hurt us. They frustrate us. They wound us. And when they do, that self-protective mechanism wants to pop up. And so it's easy for us to focus on their failures because now we're holding something over them. And we don't feel as vulnerable. And we feel a little more justified because they're not perfect either. But in every team relationship, and when there are relationships, gaps get created every single day. So I'm just saying we got to be people that extend grace. And in the gap, we don't put suspicion of team members. We put trust. We got to put that in the gap because every one of these gaps are going to get filled with something. And every time a team member or church member makes a promise and sets an expectation and doesn't come through, they create a gap. I create gaps. You create gaps. We all do it. I remember Tim, when we were in the old dorms, 2 or 3 times Tim told me he was going to tile the bathrooms in the dorms. Well, they never got tiled, ever. But so I have 1 or 2 options. He lied to me. He didn't do what he said he was going to do. He's a man who doesn't keep his word. Tim told me he was going to do that. He needed to do that. Or, you know what? He had every intention, and he really wanted to do that. He wanted to do that for me, but he just didn't have the money to do it. But had he had it, he would have done it. And he wanted to do it, but it just didn't work out. Isn't that a better way of looking at it? Yep. Because now I can continue to have a relationship with Tim. I can appreciate Tim, that Tim did have my best interest at heart. He wanted to do that. But, you can't get blood from a turnip. There's only so much money. And then I also, when you're in a love relationship with leadership, you got to also think, there's only so much money that comes in every week, and there is a myriad of needs. Myriad of needs. And so you get people in different departments over different areas. Well, why did Jack get some new sound equipment and we didn't get anything in the kids ministry? And who cares about that? That's not important. What's important is that these kids right here, people listen to worship music, get the car, turn the radio on. They can listen to it all day long. You know what I'm saying? Everybody's got this different idea about stuff like that. You're either going to believe the best or you're going to suspect the worst. But it's on you. It's on you. I think mutual trust is a self-fulfilling prophecy. Wow. Mutual trust is a self-fulfilling prophecy. And mutual suspicion is as well. If you're going around all the time being suspicious of people, guess what? They're going to be suspicious of you. What's that scripture in Timothy? I think it says, to the pure of heart, all things seem pure. Well, to the suspicious of heart, all things seem suspicious. Right? It's a mentality, it's a viewpoint in life that you have. Believing the best is always the best thing to do because nothing is ever going to be gained by doing the otherwise. Nothing good's going to come of us being suspicious of one another. It's not going to make the team stronger. It's not going to make us more effective. It's not going to bond us closer together. It's not going to help us fulfill the mission that Christ has given us to fulfill. So that's why we walk in that. So let me close with this part of what I'm doing. And I just want to repeat this love list, okay? So if you want to look at it with me, let's look at it one more time. Love is patient. It's kind. It does not envy. It does not boast. It is not proud. It does not dishonor others. It is not self-seeking. It is not easily angered. It keeps no record of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but it rejoices with the truth. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, and always perseveres. Now with that, here's what I want you to understand. Love is unnatural to us. It's unnatural to us. None of these traits come naturally to any of us. What comes natural to us is selfishness and suspicion and greed and jealousy and envy and all those other terrible things that the Bible describes are what we call what? Works of the flesh. They're works of the flesh. That all comes natural to us. None of this comes natural to us. What comes naturally to us is pretty much the opposite of this whole list that Paul is giving us. But Paul has given us a successful recipe for sustaining healthy relationships with one another. He's saying, look, if you will put these verbs into action in your life, you'll have good relationships with people. You'll have a good life. And in ministry or marriage or raising our children and dealing with difficult people that are a part of our flock, and we all have them. If you want to be effective and you want to be powerful, if you want to be a kingdom-focused ministry team leader, then it's going to be sustained by patience and kindness and humility and a short memory. A short memory. And that's probably one of the biggest ones, guys, especially those of you that have been in ministry for as long as I have or longer. You better have a short memory because if you don't, you'll quit. You will. And I watch it happen all the time with leaders. They're dropping out like flies. The average youth pastor is about a year. The average associate pastor is about 3 to 5 years. Pastors in their lifetime usually pastor 4 churches in their lifetime. They go from church to church to church to church, or they just quit altogether. They just completely fall by the wayside. None of these come naturally, but every one of them is necessary. And if we don't choose to focus on these things, then here's what we'll focus on. Wounds, hurts, insecurity, our parental upbringing. Those will be the driving forces in our life instead of love. And you have to activate this every day. I mean, every day you choose love. When you wake up in the morning, you choose. Am I going to walk in these verbs or am I going to walk in the flesh? Am I going to choose to forgive or am I going to hold this over them for the rest of their life? Am I going to choose to be patient or am I going to allow them to stir me up and get me upset? And when that happens, that'll have you looking for another team to be a part of. Because obviously the team that you're working with has so many imperfections that you can't put up with them anymore. So I'm going to have to go to another team that doesn't have all these imperfections, that doesn't have this pastor as a leader, that doesn't have this person as a children's. Are y'all hearing me? Yeah. It's very, very important that we do this. Trust me, I've been on the same team for 34 years and I've been tempted to think that thought. Yeah. I've been tempted to think the thought. Just like I said, I've told my wife on a few occasions, I'm ready to go anywhere but here. And I don't want anybody to be my boss but him. And I want to work with any people except those. And they're saying the same thing about me, right? Probably even more so. But it's that kind of thinking that creates the big myth, the big lie. And the big myth, the big lie is that once you find the right ministry with the right people, you'll be a different person. Yeah. Wow. And you won't. Because it isn't about that. I deal with young people all the time. Oh, Paul, I just want to move here. Are you going to magically be somebody different by moving there? I mean, how many guys in here are like farmers and cowboys and deal with cattle? Raise your hand. All right. How many of you have ever seen a cow stick his head through a fence to eat grass on the other side? Yeah. And even if you're not a cowboy or a cattleman, you can observe that. Same grass. Different side. That's right. Even cows think that. Even cows think the grass is greener on the other side. But I'm just telling you, during my time and my experience, or my evaluated experiences, because you can have experiences and not learn. You have to evaluate your experiences to learn. They've taught me that I'm not the only one who feels that way. But it's also taught me, though, that I am the only one that can have any effect on my impatience. I'm the only one that can affect my unkindness, yes, or my pride, or my anger, or my record keeping, or my undermining relationships. I'm the only person that can do anything about that. And nobody has that kind of power over my life but me. I like what Joyce Meyer says. Listen, you don't give your joy away to anybody. I thought, man, that's good. Because you hear people, they just stole my joy. No, they didn't steal it. You gave it to them. In that situation, you gave it. Verse 11, let's end. When I was a child, I talked like a child, I thought like a child, I reasoned like a child. When I became a man, I put childhood ways behind me. And I want to encourage you as a staff member, that childish, emotional love, that goosebumpy love, that's childish love. Real love is when you grit it out with people who are imperfect, who frustrate you, and you work at getting the win. When Josh Barnett, our youth pastor, came on staff, and Josh came up through our school, our Christian school. He came up through a broken home. He had a lot of hurt, a lot of daddy issues. He was in and out, rebelling, drugging, doing different things. As a matter of fact, he got kicked out a couple of different times. Even volunteering, we had to fire him, just because he started doing stuff he wasn't supposed to do. We literally had to fire a volunteer. And Josh, he finally had a real encounter with the Lord, and God started really working in his life, and it was a really awesome thing. But Josh still had daddy issues, even though he had been saved. He still had unrenewed areas of his mind, and I had never mentored Josh. He was always under David and Stephen Sexton. I'd never mentored him. And so when Josh came on staff, I didn't really have a lot of relationship with him, okay? But Stephen was no longer there, and David wasn't really all that involved with him. And Josh had to have somebody that was going to, help him know the ropes. Well, I was that guy. And I remember when Josh first started out, he hated me. Now, remember what I said about you can be right and you can literally truth the life right out of relationships? Well, that's exactly what Paul Kern was doing. I was truthing the life out of my connection or any possibility of influence that I could have with Josh. And I realized after about a year, it dawned, I'm a slow learner. It dawned on me, this guy hates you. He's on your ministry team. He's a young man. You work with young adults, and he can't stand you. How do you feel about that, Paul? And I have to tell you, I felt awful. And I had to repent, and I had to cry, and I had to get things right. And I determined that I was going to win that guy. I said, this is not going to be. I'm not going to have some young man who ought to be a father figure to on my staff hating me. And so I started backing up, showing love, showing patience, cultivating relationship. And one thing that really speaks to young people is money. And he and Sarah, I started sowing it into their marriage. Man, I just want to buy tires for your truck. I just want to bless you and Sarah. Y'all go out and buy you some clothes. I know you got a couple of kids. And man, I'll tell you what, in no time flat, I won Josh over. And now Josh all the time says that I'm one of his spiritual fathers. I mean, last Sunday for Father's Day, he honored Tim and I in such a way. I mean, Tim and I both were just holding back tears from what Josh was saying. We have the power to do that. We can build up or we can tear down. But the benefits of building up and propping up people, because I wasn't propping Josh up. I was pointing out his mistakes, but I wasn't propping him up. I wasn't helping him, and I knew better, and I had to repent. And I just want to encourage you, if you're here and you're in that situation, I want to encourage you, repent. Repent. Let God come in, soften your heart toward the people that you work with, or even church members, or even your mate, whatever. Don't be prideful. Humble yourself. We're going to talk about the importance of humility tomorrow in church. It's just so powerful. Humble yourself before the Lord. The Bible says if you will humble yourself, God will exalt you, and He will lift you up. And here's the thing. When you get lifted up, the people that are arm in arm with you, guess what? They get lifted up too. And I got to see Josh come out of a lot of daddy hurt and find healing. And now so many, and really, if y'all listen to Josh much, one of his big mandates is the father heart of God. And God is healing his heart because he's got men who are fathering him in love, right? But that's what I'm talking about, the real deal. So I wanted to kind of give you an example of the destructive side, the immature side of love. But then, okay, here's what the mature side of love looks like, and it's powerful. It's the strongest force in the world. Love is the strongest force in the world because love absorbs the push. Wow. See, love doesn't counter-respond. It doesn't counter-react. It's not reactionary. It absorbs. That's the power of love. It absorbs the push. Remember Jesus when he was in front of all his executioners and they were mocking him? And what did Jesus say? Nothing. He was silent. He absorbed it. And then love won. Love won over it all. And sometimes on staff, you know what we need to do? We need to zip it up. We need to take it to God in prayer. Most of the time when I'm frustrated, you know why I'm frustrated? Because I'm frustrated. I haven't given it to God. I hadn't prayed about it like I should. I haven't tried to see it from His perspective or the other person's point of view. All I'm doing is being in the flesh. But we can't afford to be in the flesh on staff. We got to be people who walk by the Spirit. When I go in and talk to Tim, I have to ask myself when I walk in there, am I feeding his flesh or am I feeding his spirit by what I'm about to say? This conversation that I'm having with Tori or Josh or whoever, am I feeding their spirit or am I feeding their flesh? Am I responding out of the flesh or am I being led by wisdom? Because people are expecting us to be led by the Spirit. They're expecting us to respond that way because they want to get the right results too, right? So it's so important that we walk by the Spirit. Amen?